Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2. Testing 1, 2. coming out tonight. We are going to get started in just a few minutes. For right now, I need to let you know the cafe is done making drinks, so if you are in line right now at the cafe, it is for book purchases only. Also, if there are empty seats in your row, if we could just put those at the end of the row, so get to know your neighbor, put all of the empty seats together, that would be amazing. That way we can have as many people as possible out of the aisles. Thank you so much. I'm so sorry. I'm just going to start. I don't know where the authors are. I'm just going to start. He usually brings them over. All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 13th Annual Harrisburg Book Festival, proudly hosted by the Midtown Scholar Bookstore. Yeah! My name is Amanda. I'm the events manager here at the Scholar. Thank you so much for joining us this evening here in Harrisburg. We are happy you're here, and we hope you enjoy tonight's event with, hopefully, Marie Lou and Carissa Broadbent. As I said, this is the 13th annual Harrisburg Book Festival. We have many, many sponsors to thank for their support and enthusiasm of the festival. It's important to know that this evening, this festival, this week would not be possible without their support, so I need to thank just a few this evening. I want to shout out Penn State Harrisburg, Messiah University, Mid-Penn Bank, Lebanon Valley College, Dickinson College, Millersville University, Harrisburg Academy, Trogs Independent Brewing, AAUW Harrisburg, the Foundation for Enhancing Communities, and Explore Harrisburg. Like I said, those are just a few of our incredible sponsors, so can we get a round of applause for them this evening? We do have many events coming up over the next few days through Sunday, October 19th, including our incredible outdoor tent sale. Who's been to the tent sale so far? Okay. There are 30,000 books waiting for you in the tent and 10,000 being added every day, I've been told. We are also hosting over 20 visiting authors, as well as having Children's Day programs, our popular blind date with a book, and much, much more. If you haven't already, please take a festival brochure as you leave this evening. Visit our website at hbgbookfest.com and stay tuned to our social media pages for updates and announcements. Lastly, I do have just a couple of guidelines for you tonight. The books you have in your hands right now are already signed by the authors who, thank God, are here. We are also going to have a book signing and personalization right next door after the talk. That is going to be to the left when you go out those main doors. You'll go up the ramp, and it'll be great. Please note that you can bring one book from outside the bookstore with you this evening to the signing. All other books must be purchased from the Midtown Scholar. But now it is my honor to introduce our speakers this evening. Marie Lou is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of more than 15 novels, including Legend, The Young Elites, Warcross, Skyhunter, and Stars and Smoke. She graduated from the University of Southern California and initially jumped into the video game industry, working for Disney Interactive Studios as an artist. Now a full-time writer, Marie spends her spare time reading, drawing, playing games, and getting stuck in traffic. She lives in Los Angeles, makes sense, with her family, and Red City is her first adult novel. Carissa Broadbent has been concerning teachers and parents with mercilessly grim tales since she was roughly 9 years old. Since then, her stories have gotten slightly less depressing and hopefully a lot more readable. Today, she writes novels that blend epic fantasy plots with a heaping dose of romance. She is the #1 New York Times and USA Today best-selling author of the series Crowns of Neaxia? Yep. And War of Lost Hearts. You know when you just read a word, you don't actually say it out loud? Yeah. And Carissa lives with her husband, her son, and one perpetually skeptical cat in Rhode Island. Of course, the new novels we are here for this evening are titled Red City by Marie Lou and Daughter of No Worlds by Carissa Broadbent. These are two of the most anticipated fantasy novels of the year, and it is such an honor to welcome Marie and Carissa to the 13th Annual Harrisburg Book Festival. So without further ado, please join me in giving them a warm Harrisburg welcome.
Testing. Oh.
Testing. You guys hear us? Okay.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Oh my goodness.
This is incredible. What a beautiful space.
I know.
And there are people here, and there are people there, and there, and there.
Yeah.
There.
This is a true celebration.
Yeah,
I love
it's
it.
I
There's balloons
spy.
and
I love
everything.
it.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to be here with you. We were just talking a little bit backstage. We basically did like a pre-panel.
We did the whole panel, and now we're going to do it again and be like, wow, this is new information that I've never heard before.
But I'm sure lots of cool new things will come up. But
Yes.
I am so excited to do this with you. I have seen your books obviously everywhere. And I am so excited for Daughter of New Worlds. So
I am so excited. When my publicist told me that we'd be doing this today and that you would be my conversation partner, I was like, oh my God, she's a real author. I'm a fake poser author, and she's like a real author. Like
I have no idea what you're talking about.
I was starstruck. And I'm so excited to celebrate this book with you. I am 8%. I'm 8% in. I thought I was going to be much further, but has anyone here read it? Anyone finish it? Okay, right? You've got some people here. We're still staying spoiler free, but mostly for me, because I would be mad. But it's so fantastic. You're such an incredible storyteller and writer.
Thank you. That means a lot coming from you, so thank you. And I was also delighted hearing your bio up there about you being just like a menace storyteller as a 9-year-old, because I feel like we would have been friends, because I was also a menace when I was a child with my very depressing and dark stories.
I love that.
Killing characters since I was like in grade school.
I wrote this poem about a girl dying alone in the woods, but I performed it at my school talent show as in poetry slam format. So,
I love that so much, because I think my first short story was about a cat who died saving his family from a house fire, and I was 7. And my mom's reading it with this concerned look on her face. We didn't have cats, but I don't know. All my stories were like that.
Well, clearly you didn't have a cat, because my cat wouldn't die saving me from anything.
That's true. See, this is a very unrealistic story, because whose cat is going to do this?
That's a very dog thing to do. I say this as a cat person, no shade to cats.
She clearly does not have cats.
Clearly.
1 star.
Yeah. I guess, should we talk about world building, real artists?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. So how do you, one of the things that really stuck out to me when I started reading Red City, from even not that far into it yet, page 1, even though it's set in our world, which, by the way, it is shocking to me when fantasy authors are able to write, honestly, any kind of author, frankly, is able to write in our world, because there's so many rules that exist in the world, in research and facts that you have to adhere to, versus
facts.
Me who just...
So pesky.
Yeah, I just make shit up. That's what I do. But there's still such a sense of magic that's imbued, from page 1, even before there's actual real magic happening. So how do you do it? That's the question.
Well, I'm very glad that illusion came across, because I think this is my first attempt at urban fantasy. So this is kind of new ground for me as well. Usually if I'm writing in our world, it's science fiction, or I'm also, I'm making up everything in high fantasy, which is always super fun, which I want to ask you about in a second. But I feel like with this one, my kind of fun challenge for myself was how much can I make people believe that this magic might actually exist in our world today, that maybe you'll go home and be like, I could be an alchemist, this is possible. But the first inkling for it came when I was actually doing a course several years ago, this summer. This sounds so much fancy. It was a 1-week course at Oxford where I get to.
Okay.
But okay, look, anyone can get into the course. It's not the only 4% get in or whatever. But you get to pretend to be a student. So I was I want to pretend to be a student at Oxford. So I did this course, and the biggest perk is you get a library card, because if you're a tourist at Oxford, you're not allowed to go into the libraries, but if you have the library card, you can go in. And I was just like a kid in a candy store, just running around these beautiful ancient stacks of well-preserved books, just yanking them off the shelves, this giant stack. And I went and sat under the Radcliffe camera, which is this beautiful domed, it's just OG dark academia. This is basically it, and it feels very magical in there. It feels like you are in a space where they did actual magic. And one of the books I pulled was The History of Alchemy, and that was where the seed for writing the magic system for this came from. And I think maybe the genesis of being in that kind of real world space that felt like it had that kind of magical energy to it lent itself to the way that I was building the magic system. And it is hard trying to, make it feel like it's real. You have to play within the rules of the real world. There's not, if you throw things in, you do kind of have to try to make it make sense. But it was but it's also like limitation breeds creativity sometimes too. So you get to try to figure out different ways of making it feel like, oh, this is something that could happen. But for you, Daughter of No Rules is high fantasy, and you're making up everything in it, and it's both amazingly fun, but also you're like god of your world, and that comes with a lot of responsibilities of like having to make sure everything makes sense. So how do you go about starting to build everything from scratch?
So it's always like, I did this to myself because I kicked this off with world building. I feel like I cannot speak intelligently about world building because I feel like I'm terrible at it, to be honest with you. Like, it's my greatest writer insecurity. I do like to play God. I feel like my blink twice for help would be if I announced that I was writing like a historical fiction. Like everyone would be like, she's being held captive somewhere in the basement of Pan Macmillan. Like, please go get her. So I do like the ability to like craft everything, but I also find that overwhelming. Like, are you someone who does like world Bibles? Like, for your high fantasy stuff, did you do like?
I do, but they're very messy. Like, they'll start off very nicely organized and they just kind of devolve into chaos though. I just start throwing stuff in there. There's like grocery lists in there sometimes. I just like whatever's like in my head, it just becomes like a document of everything. I'm assuming you're probably more organized than me in this sense, but
that's quite the assumption, but thank you for giving me that kind of faith. It depends. Okay, so this was, for folks who do not know like the backstory of this series, this series is very special to me because it's the series that allowed me to become a full-time author. I originally self-published Daughter of No Worlds in January of 2020, staring down the barrel of some changes in the world, which who knew what was to happen?
I can't imagine what those were at the time. Who knew?
January 2020, Carissa had no idea what was to come. And it sold, I actually looked it up in preparation for this. It sold 54 copies the entire month of January. And that's like across ebook, physical, like all of it. And I was thrilled. I was like, oh my God, that's like $200. That's one utility bill. I am like thrilled. So anyway, yeah, it was earlier in my career. I had written several books beforehand that are no longer available. They're bad. And this was like a book of my heart. And as a result, a lot of the world building, I describe it as like if I'm pouring honey on the table and it's like kind of slowly spreading out, because it was all about the character journey and the thematic journey for me. And everything was kind of built around that. And I was also this is set in a world that I had written previous books in before. So I kind of knew some aspects of the world, but it also organically expanded. And then my next series, the Crowns of Nyaxia series, I very deliberately did the opposite, where I staked out the bounds of this very big world and gave myself lots of room to play within it. So that one, I did try to do a series Bible from the beginning.
Oh, that's
with
so
limited
interesting.
Success. This one, no series Bible until I really had to at the end.
Does that mean that are you more of a plotter now too? Like in terms of figuring out like the structure of the story? Like, do you know your endings? Do you kind of know the big points? Or do you kind of just like go and see where it takes you?
I think I'm like a plantser. So for folks who are not familiar, the terminology is usually like plotter, meaning someone who plots out like an outline for the book, or pantser, which is like you fly by the seat of your pants, basically. I always know the ending, and I always know, but I often don't know, like, I might not know the mechanics of it. I might be like, oh, they defeat, X big bad, but I might not know what the actual fight looks like, until I get there. And I did know for this series the general trajectory of like the character journeys, but a lot of like the specifics, like I'd be like in my outline, it would be like they fight blah 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 and they lose, but then they figure it out somehow, and then I'd get there and be like, oh, I hate you, previous Carissa, I hate you. How about you?
I'm kind of in the middle as well. I really want to be a plotter. I've been trying to be a plotter since I first started writing. And every single new book that I write, I'm always like, this is the one. I'm going to write the outline. I'm going to stick to it. And I will write it out. And then chapter 3, after chapter 3, my characters are just like, we're going this way. And I'm like, wait, but I have a paved asphalt path for you right here. They're like, nope, dark woods, we're heading that way. And I just have to follow them, I guess. So I will put in, I will outline the ending that I think is going to happen, but I don't think I've ever written a book where I actually got to that ending. It always ends up somewhere else. So
this is distressing for me to hear, because I am about to set in on the final Nyaxia book, so a conclusion of an 8-book series. And that was when I was having that delusional moment. Actually, today I was on the phone with my husband being like, this is the one I'm going to outline chapter by chapter, and I'm going to know exactly what happens before I write a word. The thing that gets me, I can actually outline plot pretty well, but the thing that gets me is I have a hard time outlining romance, like the character moments, because they feel organic, and I feel like I have to feel them out,
I think this is the part that I get hung up on too, because characters, if you do your job right and you make a great character, they do take on a life of their own, and they start making decisions that are kind of out of your control, which makes it sound completely unhinged, but that is basically what's happening. I feel so they're just like, I'm not gonna go do that thing, and you're like, well, I'm the author, and they're like, that's fine, but so when it comes to character building, then you kind of just you follow your feels in a way, as opposed to the plot where you're like, oh, left brain is kind of charting it out, but then with character, do you feel kind of like you're following your gut in terms of when these two people meet, what are they doing, and when we get to this scene. I had so many questions for Carissa before this panel about romance, because I'm steering it that way right now purposely. But
it's very skillful transition.
Thank you.
You should be a writer.
I will think about it.
Yeah, it's okay. So I'm asked very frequently as a romantasy author. I often get some variation of the question how do you weave together plot and romance? And I have a hard time answering it, because I don't think of them as separate things. If I do my job well, the romance and the plot are intrinsic to each other. And one is driving the other at all times. They're driving each other. So it's not I'm oh, here, let's do some plot stuff and let's do some romance stuff. The two things are kind of happening together. And that has worked out with most of my books. Some of them, the characters are doing a lot of big plot stuff, and their romance is already kind of in an established place or whatever. And then the challenge becomes, where are they going to have time to bang? And how am I going to
these are important questions.
These are important questions.
Yeah.
Seriously. I mean, we're joking, but we're not joking. It's
Listen, if you don't ask yourself, your editor's going to ask you. So
yeah, there are reader expectations to uphold, and sometimes I'm like, the world is literally ending. We need a clean bed, ideally only one, and we have to find a place for the undead dog to go, so she's not just sitting and watching the entire time. These are big questions, but anyway, with the actual romance and building that, they're inextricable for me. If I do my job well, it should be, especially when they're actually falling in love. Usually that is so intrinsic to the plot that because both characters should be major players in the plot, and their romance should be influencing their decisions. The thing that I can't do, I can't outline. I feel like I could not outline a contemporary romance book, which is all feeling moments.
Right.
Because that I have to
there's
feel
less
out.
Plot hook to hook onto, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I can't outline. I'll just be drafting and I'll be like, oh, I feel like they need an emotional scene here, and then I'll stop and be like, okay, what's that going to be? Because it just feels like it's time. That stuff is very organic.
That makes a lot of sense to me, and I'm gonna maybe try to do that more in my head, I guess. I'm always so curious about how you handle that, because I really struggle with the romance part. I feel like I should be listening to my gut more, but I get nervous, or I get kind of like self-conscious about the whole process, and maybe don't follow my gut sometimes, and I kind of need to just kind of let go sometimes. If my heart is like, they need a moment, like they need an emotional beat here, I kind of need to listen to that. So.
I really understand that, though. Like, especially this book, because it was earlier in my career, and the previous 3 books I had written before it, there was romance in them, but it wasn't as much, you know?
Yeah.
Like, this is the first book that I wrote where, like, the romance was a major, major part of it. Mm-hmm. And I did feel self-conscious. Like, I feel like our society is very cynical right now. And even, like, you'll see it in, like, music. Like everything is kind of, like, a little ironic and, like, a little disaffected. And it does almost feel, it feels like a little embarrassing to be writing, like, mushy stuff, you know? Like, right. There's a stretch of 2 chapters in this book where, like, a lot of the, like, falling in love stuff happens. And I remember, like, reading it to my writing group and being like, is this too much? Like, I feel like it's too much. And it very much wasn't, like, reading it now, especially more as a romance author. But you do have to, like, let go of the cringe, you know? Like, you feel cringy writing it.
Yeah, that's so interesting that you say that. Like, once you finish it and you go back and read it, you're like, oh, this feels very natural. Mm-hmm. But, like, in the moment, it feels like 10 times more charged than what it actually comes out being. So that's really interesting. I feel like maybe I also need to turn off the part of my brain that's like my editor is going to read this. And that also makes me not do things, and I need to, like, stop doing that to myself.
I don't have well, okay. So because I was indie, I've only been working with, I worked with editors. I had editors. One of my editors that I hired is, like, my ex-boyfriend. So that is, like, a little bit extra, like, from, like, a long time ago. We're friends. It's fine. It's not weird. But, like, my writing group was, like, my ex-boyfriend, my brother, and my husband's best friend. Like, that was, like, so yeah, there were, like, I remember writing the love scene in this book and being like, this is basically porn. And then, like, I'm reading it now and I'm like, oh, it's so sweet, you know? But I think you have to, like, just turn off that part of your brain. But it gets easier. But, like,
good. I'm glad to hear that.
But do you feel that way? Do you feel that way about, like, other? Do writing other relationships come easier to you?
I think so. I think any time that I'm, like, torturing my characters with each other comes pretty easily. I don't know what that says about me as a person.
I was about to say that's half a romance right there.
That's true. That's true. Really, I just need to think about it that way, and I think I'll find a much easier time. There's a very, like, fraught mother-daughter relationship in Red City that I can't say it came naturally or that it was easy, but it was definitely, like, probably the one with the thing that had a lot of, like, heart in it for me. I don't mean that the other relationships didn't have heart in it, but, you know, this was the one that kind of really, it was in the original outline for this book. Like, I started it in 2019, so many in the before times, before the pandemic hit, and that was, like, basically the only piece that survived from that early draft, and so that meant a lot to me. I think I find myself revisiting, like, sibling relationships over and over in my books. I love a good found family, you know, when you get, like, just a group of misfits together. And I love writing the romance. I love it. It just takes me a really freaking long time. Like I don't know how you know, your time is or pacing as you write certain types of scenes, but, like, I can bust out an action scene in, like, a day, but if I'm trying to write, like, 8 lines of banter, it will take me, like, 2 months to get that down because I'm just, like, repeating it in my head over and over. Because I think the problem is I'm very awkward with romance in real life. I was like this as a kid, and as a teenager, I was incredibly obtuse to, like, if someone liked me, they had to go up to me and say, like, I am physically attracted to you, and would you like to go on a date? Otherwise, like, I will not get it. So writing banter is, I guess, not natural to me as a human. And so I'm always impressed when that can come naturally to an author, you know?
It's almost like, well, first of all, that sounds like great banter to me. You should just use that.
I will. I'm going to put that in.
The shortest romance novel in the world. Okay.
Well, if you put it that way.
All right. Your place or mine. Let's go. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like when you're trying to write. Have you ever had to write a character that's way smarter than you?
Oh, yes. All of my characters are way smarter than me.
Yeah,
it's a real problem. I'm like, why do I keep doing this to myself?
I know. Like writing a schemer, you know, like writing someone who's always like one step ahead. Like,
yeah, I just live on Wikipedia all the time trying to like learn things that my characters already know.
Oh, see, that's why I write like super fantasy where no one has to know anything. I just make everything up.
Well, it's like I love seeing like writers, you know, search histories where just like how to pick a lock, how to poison a man without being discovered. Just like hundreds of these kinds of things. I'm pretty sure the FBI has like a special list just for authors. They're like, is she a potential threat to the national security or is she an author? You know?
Or both. Or both.
Or both.
Yeah, this is like embarrassing, but the number of times, okay, I write exclusively epic fantasy, and there's always a fucking war, and I'm always like, never a war, never again, and then I write my next book, and I'm like, all right, so there's this war, and everyone's like, ugh. I remember I said to all of my friends after I wrote this series, which is very epic fantasy, especially when we get to like the third book, I was like, I'm never writing another battle scene ever again, like never again. And then I wrote The Serpent and the Wings of Night, which is about like a vampire gladiatorial tournament. And I remember writing the first trial and saying to my friend, Claire Sager, who's a wonderful author, I was like, Claire, what is this? Why is this so hard? I thought I would never write a battle again. She's like, well, do you know what a gladiatorial tournament is? Like, it is, in fact, a series of battles. And I was like, no, I meant like the war kind with the pointy sticks running at each other, you know? Like, yeah, I say it every time, and I never listen to myself. But the number of times I have Googled, what's a good number of guys for an army? Is like...
Well, what does Google say? Is it like, it depends?
It depends. It sucks because it vastly varies, you know? So I'm like, many thousands, like lots.
Are you trying to conquer a village or a city?
Right.
Be specific.
I just try to avoid numbers whenever possible, and I shouldn't have said that because now you guys are going to notice in my books that I'm a professional.
Well, listen, my very first book that got published had one of the main characters, like her thing was counting things. And I'm just like, why did I do this to myself? Like my girl June, she's just like counting tiles or counting seconds, and that's just like what she does. And I'm the worst like math person in the world. And I was like, I don't know why I did this to myself. You're thinking of like, speaking of characters that are smarter than you, so when I go back, like I've had readers contact me all the time and they're like, these numbers don't add up, or like this time, it doesn't make sense for her to get there in that many seconds that she said. I'm like, you know what? Anyway, it's gonna be fine.
Magic. Speaking of which, how do you build a magic system? Do you like that? Mine was not
with magic.
Yours. Yeah.
So going back to Oxford, so I was sitting there, you know, with the stack of books and reading the history of alchemy, and which is like actual, you know, our history of magic essentially. And alchemy is like the precursor to chemistry. And as I was reading it, in this book they talked, like ancient alchemists really did talk about it as chemistry, as a science. You're like, oh, you can technically change lead into gold, which you can't do, but you know, they wrote about it as if it was real. And I think that was a huge factor in me thinking, like, I'm going to try to make this magic seem as scientific as possible. I was very bad at science in school, so this was the other part of like, why? Like halfway through the draft, I'm like, why am I doing this to myself? But I think and I'm curious, when you hook on that right bit of world building, like my brain just like floods with questions, and that's how I know it's right. And so when I was reading that and I realized that alchemy was going to be in the magic system, my brain just like filled with questions of like, how would that look in the modern world if it was real, and how would people learn it? And if they learned it, how would there be specialties of like there would be branches of alchemy and people specializing in those branches, and then how would that fit into our society? Like, do people make money with it? You know, is it, how powerful are they? What's the cost of doing it? And just on and on and on. And I think once you start asking all those questions, it helps to, then you start making the rules. Like, it's kind of like when you're playing God in epic, you know, in a high fantasy, and with the magic system, now I'm God of this magic system trying to set all these parameters. And so it was really fun, and it kind of came piecemeal to me as the draft was going on. You know, I would get to us, and I tend to do like half of that world building and magic system building before I first draft, and then the rest is happening like during the first draft. So I get to a point where the main characters are like, I get stuck somewhere. I'm like, oh, I need to build that part of like, I realized like I didn't have any of the specialties down. So I'm like, okay, pause draft, and then go to the magic system building and figure out like what are each of these branches that they need to learn, and then everything that comes with that, and you know, which one of the characters is assigned to which thing, and who is good at what, and how does that fit into the rest of the plot. And I think I'm starting to realize as I'm talking that this is why my outlines don't work.
No, I mean, I think there's just a level, like, it sounds like you're very driven by curiosity. Like that, you knew it was something you wanted to pursue because you had a lot of curiosity around it. And you were kind of working through that curiosity, like, in the story. And that's not, to me, that's not wasted time, because that's where you found, like, the drive and passion for the story.
Yeah, I hope so. I feel like maybe this is just part of our process. Like, do you find yourself discovering things like that as you go along in your first drafts, or are your first drafts kind of like very clean and, you know? I have a friend who writes incredibly clean first drafts. I'm like, I hate you forever.
Yeah, good for them. We love that
I know, good
them.
for them is what I say every time.
Yeah, it's definitely like rule stuff. Oh, is that 5 minute warning? Is that all right? Yeah, okay. Yeah, rule stuff, definitely very squishy in my very first draft. Like, I am a great abuser of the TK. Like,
me too.
Yeah, I do not edit at all as I draft. Like, I actually write on like a little writing device so that I like physically cannot, like, I don't at all. So it'll be like no one has a name, and then like just TK like everywhere. And then a lot of times I do have to figure out, like, there are questions I have to answer later. So wait, I'm curious though, and I know we're like up on time, but I'm so curious. So how much of alchemy, I know nothing about alchemy, real or fake. I mean, it's all fake, but how much, but like, you know.
Like, is it?
Or is it? I'm just throwing you guys off. So how much of it is like your invention versus like alchemy as it existed in Oxford Library, in history?
Yeah, that was fun to play with, because part of the game that I had for myself was like, okay, I want people to kind of be a little curious about, like, I wonder if this was like real historical alchemy, or if this is like just made up BS that I put in there. But one thing that was really interesting, it's in the book, all alchemists are given like an attribution, like a nickname. So, for example, once you are considered like legit enough to become an alchemist, you are handed a name of a previous like historical alchemist. And in this version of the world, the Greek gods were actually alchemists in ancient history. So Zeus was an alchemist who could like transmute nitrogen and oxygen in the air to make lightning, and that's why people thought he was a god, and so on. So in this world, it's like there's an alchemist named Zeus, and there's an alchemist named Hades, and there's an alchemist named Mozart and Shakespeare, and these were all like people who were alchemists in their past, and they carry on the name as if they're immortal. So that is a historical fact. So in the History of Alchemy book that I was reading, they said that like historically alchemists, well, you know, people who thought they were alchemists, would take on the name of an alchemist who came before them. So they would write as if they were Socrates or Isaac Newton or whatever. And which honestly, I'm like, that is a little obnoxious, but whatever. They're like, the Socrates who came before me.
They were probably insufferable in real life, but
they were
okay.
probably
They're
very
fine.
insufferable in real life, which is why they are who they are. But like, I thought that was such a cool like little thing that I decided to put that into the story and just carry it over into modern day. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's a mix. Yeah.
That's so cool. That's so cool.
Yeah, it was fun to play with.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you do research for? Do you do any like do you? I was curious if you looked up any like weird, like medieval things or whatever from our world, and then you're like, ooh, I'll put that into the story. Like, was there anything weird that comes along in your researching or whatever that ends up in your stories?
So I have I actually, my worlds are a bit anachronistic, and I do that on purpose. On top, I joke about me being lazy, and I am, but also, I really don't want my stories and my world, at least for the series that I'm working on now, to be, for someone to look at it and be like, oh, this is an analog of this specific time or place in our world. Like, it's a totally separate thing. So I don't try to pull in specific, like, historical things or anything. My most notable research, and this is real depressing if you know the context of what I'm about to say, was I had to try to figure out how many severed hands could fit in a crate. Like, are we talking like dozens, hundreds? And then I was like, then you have to adjust for like various sizes of hands from different ages of people. It got really depressing. I had to make the box smaller because it turns out a lot of hands, and it couldn't be like it couldn't be thousands of people,
I'm having like flashbacks to my math homework of like how many jelly beans are in this jar.
That is what it was, but it was just severed hands of innocent people. It was like 4th of July, and I was at like a friend's like pool party, and I was like, hey guys, how many hands do you think? While I'm like wearing my American flag bikini, how many hands do you think could fit in a box? Like,
this is like the text that I sent my neuroscience major roomie in college, and I sent her all kinds of weird questions.
That's so useful,
right?
You should keep that connection.
Yeah, I asked her all kinds of stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm like, right before a person dies, what kind of chemicals are present in the brain? And she'll be like, hold on, and I'll see like the little ...
Can you forward that?
I will. She's a treasure trove of information.
You're very lucky. You're very lucky to have her.
I am. I think. Are we up on time? Okay.
It's your show. You guys tell us.
Where do we even
go?
We're
very chaotic. So
I know, right?
We are ready to transition to audience Q&A. So if you have a question, raise your hand. I will bring the microphone to you so you don't have to shout. I think Alex has one for upstairs as well, because I cannot climb over everybody. All right. Any questions right here? All right.
Hi. How much of yourself do you see in your characters, or are they just completely separate entities?
It's a great question.
It is. You go first.
Okay. Well, for Red City, I definitely gave Sam, I think, more of myself than I have put in any character that I've ever written. I think there's a little piece of me in pretty much every character I've written, which, I don't know what that says about me as a person. But Sam specifically has a lot of my childhood in her. I was an immigrant kid to the States, and my mom was a waitress, so that was her first job in the States, and so I spent a lot of my childhood kind of like sitting in this restaurant closet just waiting for her for her shift to finish, and that's how Red City opens, is with Sam doing the exact same thing. That's what her mom does for a living. And Ari, the second main protagonist of Red City, he was inspired by this boy that I remember from 4th grade, who was like, so I moved around a lot as a kid, and I remember I was in this one elementary school for just like 6 months, so I didn't make any friends there, and I just kind of sat in the back and was very quiet, and there was this boy who sat next to me. And we weren't friends, but we were friendly. Like, he was a nice kid. Like, he was just one of those like quiet, nice kids who, if he would just slide a pencil over, he saw I was looking for mine, or would be really helpful. Like, he would like if I was lost in the class or something, he would like slide over his notes, or just like a nice kid. And then I moved, and I don't even remember his name. Like, he was just a person that passed through my life, but I think he was the inspiration for Ari and for the whole story between Sam and Ari in Red City. Yeah. So,
that's so
how
cool.
about you?
I never deliberately base a character on myself. I think there are some elements of my personality. Many of my main characters are actually nothing like me, like very, very dissimilar to me. Of all my main characters, I would say that Max and Tasana from Daughter of No Worlds are probably the most like me. And I didn't even consciously realize it, like certain elements. I didn't consciously realize it until my writing group of, I had asked them, I was like, dude, I don't think that I base any of my characters on myself. And they were like, workaholic and socially anxious mess. like, yeah, they're very similar to you. So I guess there are a few aspects, but I never intentionally base one on me. And a lot of them are very, very different from me.
We're going to go up top now.
Hi. I was wondering what your last great read was. Not good, but great. Like, could not put the book down, great. And I'm going to give you guys a pass and say you're not allowed to say your partner in crime's books or anyone else you might run into at the book festival.
Oh, that you're making it hard for us here.
Yeah, I'm thinking.
My brain just turned off when you said that. I was like,
this
books? What are those?
Yeah.
What? I've never read one.
Yeah, for some reason, this is the question that always gets me at every panel. I'm like, duh. Obviously, I've read books, but for some reason, when this question comes up, I'm always like, I've never read a book in my life. I don't know what books are.
I don't know what they are.
You know.
I will say, okay, I'll tell you the first book that popped into my head. And I will say it is, and I do know the author, and I say this completely like with love. It is the most unhinged book I have ever read, and thus it has been the most memorable book that I have read this year. The Kiss of the Basilisk. I have never read anything like it. And Lindsay is lovely. She is so lovely. I met her after I had read it, and I was like, wild ride, and she was like, yeah, that's what my mom said too. There is nothing I can do to explain it. If you decide to pick it up, you will know within like a single chapter if this is a ride that you're willing to take. But it's the most unique thing I've ever read. And I will say I enjoyed it the entire way through.
Alex, do we have copies of The Kiss of the Basilisk? No. He's like...
That's so great. Now, I haven't read this, and now I'm going to buy, like, today.
Now you're going to be like the Great Gatsby.
Okay, last great read that I couldn't put down. So I'm kind of new to the world of cozy fantasies, and so the very first one I picked up was Legends and Lattes. And I read that, like, fairly recently. I think I'm kind of, like, late to that bandwagon, and I had never read a cozy fantasy up until then, and I read that, and just like that was just like I was like, I didn't know we were allowed to do this in fantasy, where everyone's just having a great time, and the worst thing that can happen is your coffee shop's oven isn't working or whatever. I was whining to my husband for the rest of that day about needing like cinnamon buns. It was great. Yeah.
All right. Right over here to your right one more time.
Well, you've kind of answered this, Carissa, but I'm curious, first, what is a genre you would never want to write in? And second, what is a genre you wish you could write in?
You go first, because I half answered already.
A genre that I would never write in? Is nonfiction a genre, I guess? I don't know. I'm not very good at writing nonfiction. Yeah,
You could write like a craft book. Would you ever write a craft book? Like a writing craft
I guess
book?
maybe, but I don't know how to teach anyone anything. I'm just a chaos gremlin when I write.
Are you aware that you're an extremely successful individual? Let's just...
I have groceries in my Worldbuilding doc for the week. Like, this is how organized I am. I don't know if I can share that. Anyway, I'm not very good at writing essays and that kind of thing. So I think maybe nonfiction would be the last genre that I would try. Never say never, but it wouldn't be first. And the other one was, what genre do I wish I could write? Horror, I think, would be fun. I think, well, I used to watch a ton of horror and read a ton of horror, and it was like, read Stephen King when I was way too young. I think I was like 9 when I read Pet Sematary, and it like scarred me for life. And never made me look at my dog the same way again. But I think that would be fun. Yeah, I'll go with horror. How about you?
I would read that. For what I wish I could write, I would love to do like I'll say space fantasy, not sci-fi, because there's too much science in sci-fi, and we already established that I can't with that. I like fantasy, but in space, like Star Wars. I am a strong proponent that Star Wars is space fantasy, not sci-fi. Star Trek, sci-fi.
Oh, it totally is fantasy.
It's space fantasy.
Yeah, space fantasy.
There's swords. I mean, there's magic. It's fantasy. But I almost don't think that that's like different enough. You know who I'm really envious of? I am envious of the mystery and thriller writers. Because that's like skill, like to be able to pull that off. And then they write like so many freaking books. And I'm like, you just do it over and over again. It's incredible.
They're like plotters. They're plotters.
They plot.
Yeah.
Like,
This is my problem. Yeah.
I feel like there's always something as an author. And that's why it kind of ticks me off when authors are like dismissive of other genres, like the romance people or the thriller people or whatever. It's stupid because there's so much to learn from every genre. You learn dialogue from romance, and you learn like pacing from thrillers, and you learn plotting from mysteries. There's like so much there. So I really respect, and I would love to be able to write one, but I don't think I'm ever going to have that game.
All right here. This question's for Carissa. Where did you come up with the symbolism of the butterflies in Daughter of No Worlds?
Oh, that's a great question. So, it was always pretty intrinsic to her, and I actually think it might have happened organically. Like, I think in that first scene when I wrote it, the butterfly, when she was performing, there's this scene where she conjures a butterfly. And I think that just kind of happened. And I kind of just clung onto it as her symbol, because even in that first scene, it was seen as something that was like pretty and fragile and just like kind of this meaningless little like pretty thing, which was what she was, to these people. They saw her that way. And then as it went on, I, was thinking about it and how that could also be it's kind of grotesque, like the process of a caterpillar becoming a butterfly, it's very transformative and like kind of like dark. Like the more you think about it, the more you learn about how that works. So it becoming this symbol of her going through this like really like painful and grotesque process and transformation, and then becoming like a symbol of her strength and not just this fragile, disposable thing that everyone felt that she was.
All right, down in front, right, yep.
So I have two. The first one is Six Scorched Roses. Carissa is single-handedly my favorite book, and how you were able to fit as much burn and pain and yearning in less than 200 pages is still mind-boggling to me. But are we going to get more novellas in Crowns of Nyaxia? You did say 8 books, and I'm yearning and pining and begging for more.
I'm just amazed. You guys aren't sick of me by now?
No.
It's too many books. But also, well, first of all, thank you so much for, I'm so honored that you liked it, because when I wrote that book, I really thought no one was going to like it. I was like, especially coming from Serpent, which is like, vampire gladiatorial tournament to the death. I was like, oh, this is like just some scientist lady hanging out in a castle with a hot vampire. And, I wrote it because I wanted to, and because I had a contractual obligation to write something. And I just thought, sure, I'll write this. So thank you. I do not currently have any plans to write any additional. 8 books it's a lot of books. It's a lot of books.
So you also did Slaying the Vampire Conqueror as part of like a collaboration. So do you have any more collaborations in the work where other authors are going to be combining and joining forces?
I don't right now, but never say never. I mean, I love being able to do these kind of collaborative projects, and I think it's so exciting that like that used to be something that only like kind of the self-published authors did for the most part, because we had more like flexibility and freedom to do that. But like seeing like Allie Hazelwood is doing a project similar to that, which is so cool. So not currently, but never say never.
And then last thing, so tomorrow is a cover reveal. Any like hints you could give us for Septimus's book? Are we going to see a cigarello on the cover, or?
I think it's very pretty. I feel like you know the pattern by now, right? There's like a flower, right? There's going to be a flower. It's very pretty.
Alex, do you have any questions up there? He's like, no.
Thank you. When coming up for names for like your places, your people, and your things, do you have a system that you stick to, or do you just kind of be like, this sounds right? And how do you make sure it fits the world right?
That's a great question. And kind of, it depends, I guess, on the book and the characters. For Legend, I remember naming Day Day just because it matched his mantra in life, which is to walk in the light. So that was his street name always. Sometimes it's just because I think a name is pretty. Like there's a character in The Young Elise named Raphael Laurent Basset, and I was just like, I just need a really pretty name because he's really pretty, and that just needs to match. So I was just in a baby name like website for the longest time, picking like the prettiest combination of names. So yeah, I guess it depends. And for Red City, I had the most fun coming up with the attributions, like the nicknames that all the alchemists have, and that was just me looking up a lot of really like people in history with really cool names, like Constantine. I'm like, somebody's got to have a nickname of Constantine. I'm like, who can have that in here? And it's kind of like the bad boy has that name, obviously. So
Obviously.
yeah.
I pull them out of my ass completely. That's why my names are like chaotic. Like I know, sometimes I'm like, why? Like there's just so many consonants all together. Like I don't know. In my first drafts, like nobody has a name. The main characters do, but it'll be like, we've got to go west to TK, said Captain TK of the TK, and then I have to go back and like come up with all the names at once. There's this great website called fantasynamegenerator.com. Oh yeah, I have been on there. Fantastic. But I do. Okay, jokes aside about how unprofessional I am. I do try to be intentional about kind of like the general vibe, especially like in the Nyaxia series with like the 3 vampire kingdoms. I try to give them names. I try to have like kind of a general vibe and like certain letters that appear more often for each of the 3 houses to kind of make them seem culturally distinct, because they are. And then sometimes, I only recently started doing this, sometimes names are Easter eggs to like that character. And it's kind of funny because I always think that people are going to figure it out like immediately, and there are some that people have never pointed out. Yeah, I would give examples, but I won't give examples. But sometimes I do go looking for like historical figures or like gods or like Latin words or something, and like just twisting and twisting and twisting until I come up with something I like.
Hi. So I guess my question is, when it comes to writing the different characters, I know a lot of people like to give characters flaws. How do you have these characters seem to be heroes while also sort of pressing on those flaws, which are really important for character development?
Yeah, that's also such a great question, because it's it can be, it's something that changes from draft to draft for me too. So I'm kind of figuring it out, and the characters kind of change as the drafts go on, as I try to figure out the best balance for it. But I think with characters that are morally gray or villains that I want someone to still love or care about, I just have to remind myself that villains all think that they're the hero of their own story, and they just often do not understand why people cannot see things the way that they do. sometimes I don't know if you have like a method for like doing that yourself. I sometimes I will like write a scene and just flip the point of view and write it from the villain's point of view. It's always more fun that way. So I will kind of flip it and see like, oh, what's making this person tick? Why are they're not just like muhaha, for the sake of it. There's usually somebody that they love also. There's somebody that they care about, that there's something that they're afraid of. And I do like to figure that out. I think that if you give them those anchors that we can all kind of relate to, like, do they have a mom? Loki loved his mom. I know he did a lot of bad things, but he's Loki. So, you try to find these like little human moments. And I do think it is easier to make people sympathize with a character who is a bad guy but has one redeeming quality than a character who's a good guy with one very bad quality. So, yeah. Anyway, how do you feel about it?
It's a tricky balance. Honestly, my favorite part of storytelling is characters and people. I think it's very important to understand people like in life, and to try to understand people, including trying to understand people that you disagree with, sometimes in really like major ways. And I think it's important to understand, everyone is the hero of their own story, and it's important to understand like why people do the things they do. So I always approach it that way. Like I don't try to put characters in buckets of like, this is a good guy, this is a bad guy, whatever. Like everyone's doing things for their own reasons. I also believe like, it's, I was about to say something so poignant and it just like zoomed right out of my head. What do I believe? I also, when it comes to like building my main characters and what their main flaws and like struggles are going to be, like I think I mentioned it earlier, I'm like theme first, so I come up with every story. What is this going to be about? Like, what is the theme or the question that I'm grappling with? And usually flaws will kind of shape themselves around that. So like if I'm, if the theme of the book is like, what does it really mean to have faith in something, right? So I know that these characters are going to be struggling with faith in different ways. Ideally, like the two romantic leads will be struggling with it in opposite ways in some way. And I love what you said about writing scenes from the perspective of a villain. That's like a really, really fun idea. But yeah, I find it helps to just think of them as people. And I know what I was going to say. I feel very strongly that it's really hard to be a good person, right? Like how many times have we all been like, oh, I'm going to be a better daughter. I'm going to be a better sister. I'm going to work out tomorrow. I'm going to be, like I'm going to do all these things. It's hard. Like it's not like, oh, you just decide to do it. And I feel like a lot of stories kind of treat it as like, oh, the villain just has to decide to be good. That's the easy part. The easy part is deciding to do it. And I think that in order to show characters successfully doing this, you have to also show characters who try and fail to do it. And that's why like the criticism of like, oh, this character was annoying because they were irrational or whatever. Have you met a human? We're like messy bitches, like we just cannot do anything. So that's how I tend to approach it. Of course, thank you.
Right, to your left and in the back. Nope. Left. Nope. Yep. Mm-hmm. Right back here. Sorry. Yep.
Hello. How do your passions show up in or influence your novels? Like, do you just sprinkle things in, like, for the kids? Do you ever get to a point where you go, like, no, you're not for this novel, and you've got to, like, just tuck them back in your pocket?
Ooh, like putting our hobbies and passions and interests in? I think they kind of sneak in naturally, sometimes without me realizing it. I guess because it kind of falls into, like, tropes too, like character tropes, favorite character tropes. Well, for Warcross, since I used to work in video games, like I always knew I was going to put in like, I was always going to write a book with games involved, and that was Warcross. So there's all kinds of little Easter eggs in there of my time working in that industry and how ridiculous that industry is. There was like a really epic Mario Kart tournament in that book, and that was very much based on real life. Like, we got very serious about it. There was like a wrestling belt in the office that was worth just everything to everyone, and every afternoon people got a chance to like get it. It was vicious, but yeah, so it sneaks in. I think I'm trying to think of for Red City. Oh, I like plants a lot. That's one thing that snuck in, which I didn't intend to sneak in, but I like my plants a lot. I mean this literally, like this is not a metaphor. I just really love like plants. So there's lots of, so when Sam and Ari are writing letters to each other, there's, when they're younger, they exchange a lot of letters. They're constantly like using plants as metaphors. There's lots of letters about trees and about roots and all of that. And that was one that I didn't realize was in there until I went back and I was like, there's a lot of plant analogies in this book. That was not intentional, but it got in there.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever intentionally done it, like to my knowledge. I really like horses, and I do notice that like oftentimes I have characters show up who like are also fond of horses, and I don't even notice it until like one of my editors, as someone who knows me and has known me for a long time, will highlight it and be like, you just can't take the horse girl out of the horse girl. Like there it is. So it's nice to sneak in.
All right, and this will be our last question.
Hi. Oh, I didn't know I had the last question. That's a lot of pressure. This is kind of aimed toward Carissa, but I want to hear both of your answers. The thing, Carissa, that really drew me first to your books was your vivid use of imagery, even in language that isn't necessarily describing something physical. But I noticed such different language between the two series. In Daughter, there's so much imagery around golden threads and silver and bronze and metals, even in glimmering thoughts and glistening this and that, versus in Nyaxia, it's so much more visceral. It's bleached bone and blood red. Did you do that intentionally, or is that a byproduct of kind of being in the world that you're writing about?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. I think some of it is me growing and changing as a writer. Like I definitely relied on certain imagery, I think, in some of my earlier books because that was like how I knew to describe that thing. Especially in this series, there's a lot of mind magic. Never again, never. I call it woo-woo magic because it's just like, woo, so I had to come up with like a lot of imagery to try to describe these like very intangible feelings. But there was also a really intentional shift in language and description for the Nyaxia series because I was trying to craft a very vivid and very distinctive sense of place. And I try to make it very distinctive even between like all of the duologies in the 3 vampire kingdoms. I want them to feel very different from each other. So I appreciate your question because that means I did my job well. Do you tend to change your descriptive words based on what kind of setting you're working on?
Yeah, I guess I do. Since like the tone, I guess it depends on the tone of the book. If I'm right, like Warcross, for example, was a much lighter in tone book than Red City, which is very dark, and the imagery kind of changes with it. I mean, in Red City, no surprise, there's like a lot of red imagery in there. Anyway, and in Warcross, because I'm like, wait, I was gonna say a thing. And I was like, that's a spoiler. So I had to cut myself off there. That was very awkward. And in Warcross, like the cover is like very rainbow, and because video games are just like Technicolor, so all of my descriptions in that book are very colorful. I'm just like, how many colors are there in the world, and how can I fit them all into this book? Which is why it will be never be made into a TV show because it's too expensive. There's just too much stuff in there. Yeah, it depends on the book.
All right, thank you so much, both of you. Can we have a round of applause for Carissa and Marie?
Thank you so much.
We will be having a book personalization next door at our Rare Books room. Just follow the crowd trying to get to the front of the line. There will be a ramp at the Rare Books room. You'll stop there, and then we will get you guys in as soon as possible. We do have copies of both the authors' books still available at the cafe for purchase. Thank you guys so much for coming out, and have a great night.